Welcome to the Wonder of WOOO podcast, where we highlight how businesses can scale profitably by serving others well. I'm Darryl Zavadny.
And I'm Ed Howie.
And this is
the Wonder of WOOO. If you're a business owner investing time, money, and marketing only to be frustrated by losing customers, then this podcast is for you.
We are thrilled to have you on the Wonder of WOOO podcast, and every week it is our endeavor to help you serve others well and actually enjoy the benefits of doing that. Ed, we talk about consistent kindness and service as really not just feel-good things, but actually they're great business.
They're brilliant business strategies, and the reality is that typically in life, what's good for humans is good for business too. So Absolutely. We're really just recognizing what already exists already.
Right. As we kind of frame and begin our time, we always do is remind our community, what is this thing? Like, it feels really cryptic, right, to say the wonder of WOOO. Like, what on earth are we even talking about?
So WOOO with 3 O's stands for winning others over and over.
Okay.
The logic is that while it does take effort to win others over, mm-hmm. it takes a whole lot more effort and intention and discipline to win others over and over. And when you do that, not only is it good for business, it's good for life.
Indeed.
Because you are intentionally saying, I'm going to do all I can for you today. And that is an incredible mission. Is what we're trying to inspire, right. Not only in commerce, but in everyday life.
Right. Now, we have entitled today's episode, It's Not About the Pickles.
It's not. What?
And, I understand, first of all, that life is divided into 2 categories of people, those who like pickles and those who don't. And there's a very clear and distinct divide.
It is a delineator.
Yeah. This is a topic that, as you know, is near and dear to my heart. It's actually, somewhat of a principle that has followed my life and business and family. So,
it is a principle. It was really like a lens and mindset that you look at the world at, right?
It is.
That's why I love talking about. I love pickles,
and I don't.
You don't like pickles?
I don't. I know this is not about that. Every now and again, I'll have one on my hamburger, and one on my Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
But in general, they're coming off.
We might have to rediscuss.
Yeah.
This really.
We got to
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
So back to the more universal principle of pickles.
Yes. So this is one of these deals that has followed me as a principle. And so I wanted to really unpack it and spend time for the benefit of our community talking about the principle of It's Not About the Pickles. So
let's do that. Let's do that right now. But before you get in the details, why does it matter so much to you?
Well, so I am a Chick-fil-A owner-operator. Have done so for 20 years, and our business is growing and busy, and hundreds of thousands of transactions a year.
And we both worked at Chick-fil-A corporate, almost overlap,
barely.
But so we have the corporate experience as well. So we're obviously we know the world of pickles relative to chicken sandwiches, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I playfully say that in my white collar days, I showered before my work day, and as an owner operator, I shower after my work day, right? So you got that world. But that's a world I've been steeped in for 2 decades, right? And so hundreds of thousands of guests a year, and every now and again, Ed, we get it wrong, if you can believe it. Well, and
I've experienced it wrong once or twice, not
right.
your restaurant, but from yes.
Well, and every one of them hurts me deeply. It truly does. And if it ever didn't, I would have to check my heart on what I'm doing.
Because you're all about wanting to ensure that you do all you can to give people what they want and need if you've got the ability.
Right. And so for our community, right, your desire is that you would delight your customers, that they would want to come back over and over and over. And so that's our desire, right? And we've talked about WOOO as being, hey, this acrostic of it's well orchestrated, it's well operationalized, it's well optimized, and hopefully it's not poorly in any of those things.
And that what we're clear about is we don't believe perfection is possible in the WOOO and the well side, and we definitely hope consistent pooing is not the case either.
Right.
The reality is that it really comes down to each individual customer interaction. Typically, unless you're 100% e-commerce, that interaction involves one of the humans on your team, right?
Right. And it's going to involve imperfection. And despite even these high accuracy scores and all of that chain-wide and even at my location, we get it wrong sometimes.
Isn't it amazing that the word imperfection sometimes is unacceptable, but it is like empirically true?
Yeah, and so in a past episode, we've talked about pain, and pain is informative. That pain, gives some feedback and direction, and so
and is ideally prevented.
Right. Yeah, and so in the case of this episode, it's not about the pickles. I really want to isolate a pain point, not just an inaccuracy, not just a mistake, but one that elicits a response that is just off the charts. And so I'm not calling out a specific example.
Do you have video of me or something?
Yeah. I'm really sorry we got the pickles missing on your sandwich.
It's actually the other way around.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later.
Well, so really the whole point is to say this is, again, feedback where we as business leaders, myself and those in my team under my care, have said, holy smokes, we'll get it wrong every now and again. What are we going to do to minimize that, to woo more and to poo less, and how do we do that? And then every now and again, we have a guest who shows up, and there is a disproportionate reaction to the offense, in my estimation. And in your business, that may happen, right? You get it wrong, you do something, and you go, holy smokes, they just came unglued. And so for me, that's the pickles, right? So part of the training that I've done with our staff.
Can I ask you a question? So when you talk about like that, of the things that really can set a customer off, there's not that the pickles is one of those flashpoints, if you will.
Sure. Well, and it's sort of become, maybe the epitome of it, right? So there may be any number of things, but
I think that is like an incredible observation, because I believe principally that every business has a friction point, which for whatever reason, you try to prevent them as much as possible. But, what you're describing is not about the pickles. There are certain ingredients that by nature are segregators, cilantro, banana, etc.
Yeah.
So what's funny is I do believe pickles is one of those items, like on a culinary side, that pickles and pickle relish, by nature, are something that people that affects people bizarrely.
Sure. Well, and I would even make it generic, and how I've internalized this is it may be a culinary thing, it may be a taste thing, it may just be my expectations weren't met, and however that is, whether that's missing a condiment, whether that's missing a straw, whether that's missing the pickles, or and so I've used it's not about the pickles as sort of this moniker, but it really, in my opinion, is the guest telling me you didn't get it right, and doing it in a way that is extreme. And please hear me, I want feedback. And so what I really want to talk about in this is how we have instructed our staff, how I have even instructed my children to receive that kind of feedback. So the narrative goes something like this. Okay. Our team's working dutifully. It's hot outside. We're in Texas, is where you and I are filming this. They're working through these processes of making sure that it's fast and it's accurate, and that we're honoring the guest's time by getting them through. And then somebody marches through that dining room, and they're holding a bag, and they have this look of angst, and I know exactly what's going on, and they have every right to be upset. Now they walk up, and they lean into a 16-year-old team member who was not even a part of the drive-through operation and say, listen, what are you guys, idiots? You can't get this right. My goodness, it's just pickles and blah, blah, blah. And so in that moment, Ed, there is a very real possibility and opportunity both in me and you and that 16-year-old. So two thought bubbles pop in my mind. You could almost view this as the angel and the demon on your shoulder, right? This thought bubble on my mind goes, this person is a rotten human being. They woke up, they kicked their dog, and they're da-da-da-da-da. And I've got this narrative running in my head, right? The other narrative that runs in my head is, I don't know, what if they're at the bedside of a dying relative all day? Yeah. What if they haven't had any sleep? What if all they really wanted to do was to get this chicken sandwich with pickles? Or without pickles, as it might be, to their sick child. And then all of a sudden my countenance might change on that.
Yeah.
Now, so please hear me. I'm not at all encouraging that my staff or your staff be, the whipping people for angry guests who treat them disrespectfully. That's not it. And we've got to create boundaries and safety and all of that. It is a really, really neat opportunity to be curious and to say,
what a great word.
How did an imperfection, how did something that we got wrong, admittedly, how do we use that as a way to honor this person and create loyalty instead of using it as a flashpoint, right? If this bubble populates in my head and I let my life and my voice live on that bubble, bad things happen.
Well, and Darryl, this is a critical part of the entire process because, we have founded our whole framework and all of our work around a essential principle that we celebrate progress, not perfection.
Right.
I'm not a mathematician, and definitely not a statistician based on my performance at Stat 23 in Chapel Hill.
Which I also took.
Oh, my gosh.
Tough class.
Yeah. Tough class. But the deal is that we can strive for perfection, but I don't believe it's actually attainable on Earth on many levels of life, right?
Right.
And there will be times when we as individuals, our team members, our employees, our bosses are going to not behave in the way that we wanted or needed them to. And sometimes that's going to be ways that I don't think they even really intended to.
Right.
So if it's not about the pickles, then what?
Yeah. Well, boy, that is potentially I don't want to say dangerous, but you feel like you're pulling a thread, right? And contextually, I think we all need to be curious and understand that, and also understand there's boundaries and all of that. I think for us, again, the word curiosity has come to mind. I think it's an acknowledgement of, boy, we didn't get it right, and I'm so sorry. And then, in the course of our being gracious in responding to it and not overreacting to this bubble, oftentimes it does come out. It's just been a really hard day. I lost my job yesterday, and I'm just really frustrated. And that might even be a chance for us to go over and above in caring for that customer. And now, this isn't contrived. It's not, whatever. In fact, it's really hard. It's very hard when somebody's standing in front of you, business owner, and saying, you did this, or you, business owner, you did this. It's really hard to respond in a way that says, I'm so sorry. And help me understand how I can make that right. And so what ends up happening is this connection and loyalty that wasn't manufactured. It's not artificial. We have truly found ways in those moments to create more loyalty than if we'd never had a problem at all. Now, I'm not encouraging you to make problems so that you can solve them. In fact, the research would suggest that a guest who's had a problem well solved is more loyal than one who's never had a problem at all. That does not mean we go out and intentionally create problems. Life is busy and complex enough as business leaders. But I think what's ended up happening is we've realized a different level of connection with a guest where they realize, I really do care. So in past episodes, Ed, we've talked about seeing one customer, not seeing all customers. There's a saying that, one death is a tragedy and 1,000 is a statistic. And same deal with customer complaints, where you're like, look, one customer complaint is a tragedy. 1,000 is a statistic. When you start looking at chain-wide numbers and, if you're part of a franchise system or whatever, it's easy to anonymize that. When you personalize that, when you actually take the time to say, oh my word, I realize that this impacted you personally, it's powerful, and it really does tie into the wonder of WOOO. I mean, it's an element of it where we've talked a lot on the front end about proactivity and how you discipline and orchestrate and all of those things and compound interest. This is one of those where you're like, yeah, so this is what happens when things go wrong, because they will.
They will. Well, and what's amazing about this is that I think that with all the pressures we have in our businesses right now as business owners, as business leaders, that we're working so hard trying to prevent those flare-ups, those non-conformances, those disappointing situations, that And frankly, this is not a pass, but in dealing with staffing issues and being able to track talent and keep them and everything, especially depending on what industry you're in, is that sometimes you want them just to be able to do the job, but really helping inspire them to get into the nuance of the job, especially not only in the customer service side and the customer relationship and the customer transaction, but also the customer retention and the customer recovery side. I mean, this is, you're talking about something real and true, and we're talking about it candidly.
Right.
Because what you're not doing, Darryl, is you're not giving a free pass for the behavior of the customer being, and I know you would allow them to be
abusive,
inappropriate or abusive to your employees, nor should any employer.
Right.
But you're saying to basically respond with empathy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would even say that it is, it starts with the leader and a willingness for the leader to acknowledge mistakes and to lead with empathy and care. And, I obviously, our community who's listening, it may be a solopreneur. It may be you've got a couple of folks. I think what we're trying to say is, if you want a consistent brand experience, again, there's this idea of intentionality of, I really want this brand to add value to your life in exchange for your hard-earned dollars. And empathetically, I acknowledge that we missed it. And so there's the part of me that if I'm on the front lines handling that I know I'll handle it a certain way. But what about my next leader, my next leader, my next leader? And I think that's really the challenge is, first of all, hey, leader, are you well calibrated on this idea of when we get it wrong, how we respond?
Right. Yes, sir.
And then it's, you talked in our last episode about systems and how you create systems to build consistency, and so that you're doing this compound interest. You're not trying to hit or trying to win the lottery. So we've got to create systems that embed empathy into the business. And I would even say that it's not, it's somewhat business agnostic, industry agnostic.
It totally is. I mean, in the service industry and with our agency, it has been very rare, but we've had some clients disappointed with the way we may have handled a part of a situation, the way we may have communicated something. And, thankfully, more times than not, they have responded graciously, or at least constructively.
Right.
Okay. Had one or two situations where it hasn't been that way. Whether earned or not, what I hear you saying is a couple things. One is that to go back to what the original intention was. The original intention was to give the customer what he wanted. And the fact is that didn't occur.
Right.
You alluded to basically acknowledge that and making that right. But then what I heard you saying, that when the customer is reacting extremely, is to not react in kind with the same extreme, but to do your best to take a breath and try to imagine that what you're seeing has nothing to do with the matter at hand.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
It could be something totally beyond the pickles or lack of pickles in your sandwich.
Perfectly stated. And if I can just interject one other quick thing, and that is, as leaders of any enterprise of any size, it is very natural to have this bubble and this bubble pop up when feedback happens, particularly
leaders, heck, humans.
Yeah, right. So when critical feedback pops up, I think what I'd like to call out for the benefit of our community, as certainly co-journeyers, you and I, is it's very easy to, it's tempting to do this, and we will periodically respond this way, because my natural defenses are, hey, don't treat my staff like that, or, hey, don't, and we did, it's not that bad. It's very tempting, and it takes over-the-top effort and empathy and humility to say, yeah, okay, help me understand that a little bit more. And so I would just, I think my encouragement is to say, if you don't get it right all the time, that's okay. we're journeying. This is the progress, not perfection conversation.
Well, and Darryl, what I like about what you have brought up and this whole idea and this whole framework and this whole like lens, that it's just a reality of the dynamics of business.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what I have found so powerful, and you described similar, was that there's kind of like two lanes here. There's the functional myths, like were there pickles on the sandwich and they weren't supposed to be, or vice versa, whatever your sandwich is, whatever your pickles are. But then dealing with the functional disappointment, but then recognizing and doing your best with the emotional response to the situation.
Precisely.
And, you know, let me ask you one question. Do you feel like that customers can be set off more easily today than 20 years ago?
It sure feels like it's happened. I think there's more acrimony and tension just culturally. Again, we're recording this here in America. Globally, there's inflation and all of this.
All these,
so there's these macroeconomic issues, and I don't want to generalize. Of course, but the incidence of it feels like it's growing, and so accordingly, that means this response is so different.
That's exactly right. And so not only is an empathetic response significantly contrasting to what is happening in most situations like that, is that if you don't have a process or plan in place, if you're not discussing it with your team, no matter what your business is, no matter what your type of employees are, that when something like this happens, here is our ideal response. Here's our process. Here's what you can do, you can't do. Because a lot of times on the team member side, the reason why they respond is they don't know what else to do.
Right. Or they feel like they're trying to protect your business. And,
Right.
So giving them permission to respond in a gracious and generous way, I think is really empowering to that team member, the frontline team member, whoever they may be, whatever industry you're in.
So as we're talking about winning others over and over, there's a clear recognition that you're not going to be successful 100% of the time. You want to increase the odds as much as possible, but a proactive solution, a proactive necessity for your business to try to protect as much loyalty as possible is to have a process in place when the ideal doesn't happen that not only serves your customers well, but it serves your team well.
Absolutely. It's been a great discussion, as always. Thank you for taking the time to talk about pickles, even though we're on different sides of that divide.
We are, but you know what? The thing about it is that I believe that you can detest pickles and I can love pickles and we can still be friends. So
Indeed.
it's all good.
That's right. That's right. Folks, community, we are delighted that you have chosen to spend time with us again today. It is, as always, our sincere hope and prayer that our time together in community with you has really helped you grow in your ability, your desire to serve others well, even when it doesn't go just right. So that is indeed our hope and desire. Ed, every time we wrap up, you say the same thing. What is it, and how do we exit from here?
Whether you love pickles or not, everyone wants WOOO.
Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
So that's it for today's episode of The Wonder of WOOO. Head on over to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to subscribe to our show. One lucky listener every single week who posts a review on Apple Podcasts will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Darryl and me. Be sure to head on over to thewonderofwoopodcast.com and pick up a free copy of our gift. And please join us next time.